Club, and welcome everyone, members and guests. It is a pleasure to bring you this 89th M&A Club webinar today and to introduce you to our panelists. For those of you who are not familiar with the M&A Club, we are a membership organization of 1,400 M&A and financing professionals from across Canada who meet normally in 19 Canadian cities each month. The club also hosts an all-day M&A forum and an M&A awards gala in Montreal, soon to be followed by an M&A awards gala in Toronto. Our first US M&A Club will open in New York City this fall. More information can be found at maclub.ca. After this webinar, all attendees will receive the list of participants with their contact info. Thank you in particular to Emily Moe, Canadian Director of the Hong Kong Economic Trade Office and one of our panelists today, for sponsoring this session. At this point, let's set the stage. Here is a 1-minute overview of today's subject supplied by the Emily Moe office. I will now introduce our panelists and moderator with apologies for their bios, as we have shortened them in the interest of time. Our moderator today is Rosemary Goder, co-founder of SystematicEdge, a financial services provider based in Hong Kong, founded in 2017, that specializes in investment and currency management solutions. They work with SMEs, HNWIs, funds, and family office clients to design and implement currency management solutions for those who have cross-currency exposure and are looking to mitigate cross-currency risk and optimize their currency management. SystematicEdge's principle is straightforward. They use technology to maximize performance and drastically compress costs for their clients. In order to do this, they use direct market access on the world's regulated exchanges in order to access financial instruments at the best price with no counterparty risk and no valuation uncertainty. Emily Moe is Director for Canada of the Hong Kong Economic Trade Office in Toronto. Emily joined the government of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region of the People's Republic of China in 2001 and worked in different bureau and departments. In December 2018, she took up the director post in the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office in Toronto, the mandate of which is to foster closer economic trade ties between Canada and Hong Kong, and also promote bilateral cultural relations and people-to-people ties. Before coming to Toronto, Emily served as the deputy head of the Human Resources Planning and Poverty Coordination Unit under the Chief Secretary for Administration's private office to support the Chief Secretary for Administration for monitoring the implementation progress of policy initiatives on human resources, planning, and poverty alleviation in Hong Kong. And Emily and the HKETO are longtime supporters of the M&A Club. We're very pleased to announce this and for our events and activities. Patricia Elliott is Senior Trade Commissioner and also the Acting Consul General for the Consulate General of Canada in Hong Kong. Patricia received her first degree from Laval University in Quebec City and went on to a 15-year career with Global Affairs Canada with posts in Calgary, Vancouver, and Los Angeles. She currently resides in Hong Kong. Ozan Isanak is also a member of the M&A Club and is an active investor and serial entrepreneur with over 25 years of international experience with the angel investment, venture capital, and private equity sectors. Based out of Silicon Valley during the first dot-com boom in the 1990s, Ozan worked closely with Fortune 1000 companies in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, New York, Toronto, Hamburg, Stockholm, London, and Istanbul. Ozan later acted as general partner in various angel investment and private equity practices. He is currently based in Toronto and is the president of Keiretsu Forum Canada, the world's largest angel investment network operating on 4 continents. Ozan also holds a partner position in Trendwell Ventures, Inc., a Toronto-based boutique M&A practice. And by no means last, Jean-Roch Martin is founder and CEO of Finance Advisory Board, or FAB, a company registered in Hong Kong. Jean-Roch possesses international Tier 1 audit and corporate investment banking experience, having held key management roles in the finance departments of BNP Paribas in France, the Americas, and APAC. Jean-Roch is responsible for CFO, COO interim mandates with these FAB clients, and is also trusted with sales-side M&A mandates, helping prepare and accompany clients through this important phase of selling their business. Clients are located around the world, including the US and Europe, with active sell mandates in Australia, Hong Kong, mainland China, France, and Greece. Jean-Roch has strong ties to Canada, given his former regional responsibilities at BNP Paribas.
Thank you very much for those introductions. And it's great to be here with the 4 of you panelists, Jean-Roch, Emily, Ozan, and Patricia. But so that we can maximize the time hearing from our panelists, I'm just going to jump right in with my questions. So first, Jean-Roch, I wanted to ask you, so you're on the ground here in Hong Kong, and it'd be interesting to hear from you about what you think are the key points companies need to consider when thinking about investing or expanding in Asia, including any global macro market trends that might impact them.
Okay. Thank you, Rose. I've prepared actually a few very quick slides to jump in the big picture. So I think Lorraine is going to display that. I think we need a few seconds per slide. So those data are from IMF. Everyone can have a possibility to adjust their own graphic. But this one basically is the real GDP evolution, 1980 to 2021, for the top 15 economy in the world. As you see, we understand some macro trends. So the top one is, of course, the USA. The second one is basically China. And the third one is Germany. So what we see basically is that most of the growth, when we tell every year, basically the GDP evolved by plus 3% in Canada and by plus 6% in China. Here we realize how much it converts in real GDP terms. So we can go to the next slide, Lauren, please. Okay, so this is the real GDP growth in 2020 during the pandemic year. And you see here that most of the Asia Pacific, what we call APAC, so Asia Pacific countries, ended the year pre-pandemic levels. And this is also part of the recent trends. If we go to the next slide, we would see for 2021. So the growth also in Asia Pacific is stronger in 2021 than in most of the other developed countries. And last slide, I wanted actually to introduce the Greater Bay Area. So Greater Bay Area is basically the regrouping of 3 countries within China. So this is basically Macau, Hong Kong, and 5 major cities of the Guangdong area here in China. And if basically GBA were a country in 2019, the GDP would be basically slightly above Canada. That means that as a country, GBA would be not ranking 9th in the world. We expect this GDP is going to triple by 2032, while the population would only grow by 12 million, currently 77 million. Okay, so this is basically the first introduction. Thank you. I think we can close the slide, Lauren. I would say so. Asia Pacific is key in your global setup. We have approximately 14 economies, which matters here in terms of sizability. But that means also it's a complex world. That means we have basically almost as many currencies. We have almost as many tax rules. So all of the clients at company know very well about the topics about hedging strategy, and this is how I met you, Rose, basically. And we know all about the transfer pricing as well. 2020, Asia Pacific is 37% of the GDP of the world, and as a comparison, USA is 25 and Europe is 15. And then 60% of the growth by 2030 would come from Asia Pacific. So I would say, when you think about global growth, it's obvious you must have Asia Pacific in your strategy, especially Hong Kong, because geographically perfect, and also basically Hong Kong remains and will remain the door key to China. We have here most of the holding companies, holding, of course, the companies in mainland China, and we have most of the regional hubs, not in the finance industry anymore. Well, we have a lot, but mostly in all the innovation, technology, health, luxury, premium brands, etc. Okay, so I would say Hong Kong is the heart of the region. The economy is already above pre-pandemic. And basically, the top priority investment are many sectors, as we saw in the movie kindly provided by Emily's office. And so this is definitely a must include in your strategy when you think about Asia.
Wow, thank you for those important insights to set the scene for today's topic, right? And so now, Emily. So we've heard some context from Jean-Roch about important points and macro trends to consider if a company is thinking to expand in Asia. But can you now tell us how your organization can practically help those companies in Canada that have decided they want to invest or expand in Asia? And maybe you have a story about a company that you've helped recently that can illustrate the resources that you have available.
Thank you, Rosemary, and thank you, Jean-Roch, for setting a very good beginning to introduce all the business advantages of Hong Kong. Yeah, our office is called the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office, Toronto. We're based in Toronto, but actually we promote the closer trade ties between the whole Canada and Hong Kong in our business strategy. Within our office, there is invest promotion unit. When people considering about business expansion, sometimes they do not have in their mind to seek assistance or support from government organizations. But I would like to let you know that we have an Invest Hong Kong promotion unit in our office, which offered customized services free of charge, very importantly, to help the Canadian companies who are interested to set up and expand in Hong Kong. We have a specialist in business development based in Canada, and they have a connection with the same team based in Hong Kong to help companies in Canada to advance their business plan in Hong Kong. What do they offer? So for companies like those in the planning stage, they provide information as an introduction. For example, the sector-specific business opportunities, how's the tax and business regulations in Hong Kong, the employment legislation. That is very introductory. For setting up stage, then Invest Hong Kong can identify right business service and also business partners for the business to set up in Hong Kong. For those who are launching or expansion, Invest Hong Kong can even provide PR and media support, much more business matching opportunities and advice to those Canadian companies. Talking about an example, I think the Intech Financial Corporation would be a good example to share. I think all the Canadian companies would, or all the Canadian audience here would know about Intech. And this insurance company, which to specialize in some data science and AI for the industry, in insurance industries, but based in Asia. They have been considering different destinations for expansion, and Hong Kong was certainly on their list. So they Intech came to our office, reached out to our investment promotion team. And what we do is our team introduced the company to the local universities, like the Hong Kong University and also the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. So they have a very easy access to the hiring of doctorates in AI, data science, or customer analytics and computer science talents. And on the other hand, because the Intech was eyeing on having a space in the Hong Kong Science and Technology Park, which is one of the INT hub in Hong Kong. So Invest Hong Kong actually put up some visit programs for Intech to go to the Science Park to meet with the management. And finally, they have rent some spaces in the Science Park to set up. With their entrance and admission into the Science Park, Intech has a chance to meet with other tenants, which is like-minded companies. Many of them are top AI and INT companies from the mainland China, for example. So finally, Intech opened their first office in the Science Park in February 2020 in Hong Kong. And very quickly, they opened their second office in December 2020, where you can imagine 2020 is the pandemic year. While the COVID is haunting the world, Intech has successfully set foot in Hong Kong and expand in just 1 year's time. So I guess in our team in my office, really, and also our colleagues in Hong Kong from the Invest Hong Kong have helped them, direct them to the right doors and the right channels, which really facilitate the company's expansion in Hong Kong to a certain extent.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, we know Intech very well here. I'm an Exco member at CanCham in Hong Kong, and they're super involved. So yeah, we know very well that example. So thank you for sharing that. I just have like a quick question. So when companies come to you, like what stage are they usually at? You know, are they big like Intech? Are they usually small, or like what stage are they at?
I think it really depends. It varies a lot. But you know, because Hong Kong has already 200 Canadian-based companies, so a lot of the big names like Air Canada, a lot of the banks from Canada have already set foot in Hong Kong for decades. So nowadays we have a more, I would say, more companies in the earlier stages, like those INT companies, fintech companies. Those services are greatly, they have a great demand in Hong Kong and the Asia Pacific region. Of course, there are also other companies like in the healthcare sector, which they see a lot of opportunity also in the Asia nowadays. So it varies, but nowadays, I guess most of the companies are in the earlier stage or in their, I would say, in the second stage of expansion. Like some of them have already established well in Canada, and some of them already, for example, have their second office in North America, like the USA already. And now they are thinking ahead, some crossing the ocean to the Asia Pacific, and Hong Kong or some other destination in Asia are in their mind, and they come to us to seek for advice.
Okay, super. Okay, so I understand that. And so they can use Hong Kong as a great springboard into Asia, so another region, right? So Patricia, so now I'd like to hear from you. So we've heard from Emily how her organization can help companies that want to invest in Hong Kong. So can you tell us what your team can do? And then inversely, how your team can help those based here in Asia that would like to invest in Canada?
Good morning, Rosemary. Thanks for asking the question. So as Bram mentioned, I'm the Senior Trade Commissioner here in Hong Kong, and I lead a team of 18 trade professionals that help Canadian companies succeed and do business in Hong Kong and Macau. And we also, as you mentioned, provide assistance to Hong Kong companies that are looking to invest in Canada. So I know that there's some of the Canadians are online on the seminar today, and they are interested in global opportunities. So it's a good moment to talk about the Canadian Trade Commissioner Service, which is what we do, and how we help Canadian companies succeed abroad. So it's something that's been in place for just over 125 years. We celebrated that last year. We have 1,000 trade commissioners around the world, and also in our regional offices in Canada. So that's 160 plus cities globally. So we offer preparation assistance for international markets, local market intelligence and advice, and an unmatchable network of contacts to help Canadian companies succeed abroad. We also offer funding. There's a Can Export program that is run out of our headquarters. And we also provide tailored support to startups through a global network of Canadian technology accelerators. And we have one of those right here in Hong Kong. So my team here focuses on a wide range of sectors that vary between agri-food and beverages to consumer products, life sciences, ICT, clean tech, infrastructure, financial services, and more. And we're always monitoring and looking for upcoming opportunities here in Hong Kong and Macau, and hoping to connect them in with Canadian companies back in Canada, or Canadian companies, that are here too. And we work closely with local partners like HKTDC, Invest Hong Kong, and to support them to come here and look at opportunities, succeed in getting them, but also establishing a presence. But we work also a lot with Canadian companies that just come in to do, contracts or do work and don't necessarily set up a presence here. We organize trade shows, including virtual ones in this COVID area. We do initiatives to showcase Canadian technologies in the market. So please reach out to my team if you'd like to learn more about that. And I'd also, as you mentioned, we also work closely with our team in mainland China and all around the Asia Pacific. A lot of times when companies come to us and we think that there's also a market for their product or their technology, their service, in one of our neighboring countries, we will definitely connect them in there. And, we find that a lot of Canadian companies use Hong Kong as a springboard to go into other parts of the Asia Pacific. So again, if people are interested in the market, please reach out to us. And in terms of Hong Kong companies looking to establish in Canada, we help with greenfield and expansion investment opportunities. And we work with the province, the municipalities, the organizations all across Canada to help, them make the right decision as to where they establish.
Yeah. So that's interesting. You talked a little bit about funding, and you talked about that you have an incubator, which kind of leads into that. I just want to ask you a follow-up question on that. So, can you tell us a little bit more about the incubator and what it does? And are you seeing any sort of trends in terms of the industries that you guys are helping within that incubator setup?
Yeah, I think it was interesting. In the beginning, there was obviously a strong focus on financial services because it is Hong Kong. But what we found is there's also a lot of opportunities when it comes to property technology, insurance technology, construction technology. So we just did an initiative with China Light Power, where we had, they were looking for certain technologies. So we set up a webinar we had about 42 Canadian companies that participated. And then we had the Technology Center from Toronto Mars that talked about what Canada does. And we also had the Chief Scientific Officer from the National Research Council that talked about Canada's strengths in clean tech. Out of that, I think we had 9 companies that pitched. And then I think we're down to 4 that are actually working with CLP, China Light and Power, at the moment. So like I said, we sort of started off on the financial sector, but it has really delved into a number of different insurtech, prop tech, construction tech. So we're pursuing those opportunities and connecting them in with Canadian companies.
Okay, well, that's super. So that's really good context, and funding sort of leads us into our next question. So Ozan, as an arranger of financing, you know that securing financing is an important part of international expansion. So can you share with us how companies in Canada, including those at an early stage, which you work a lot with, wanting to expand in Asia, can tap into the pools of capital that Asia and specifically Hong Kong have to offer? And where are those pools of capital? Are they different from, where you would find them in North America?
All right. Yeah, so thank you very much. There's a lot of insight in everybody's comments here. As you said, we focus in on the early stage investing stage, and by early stage, referring to anywhere from $500,000 to $6 million, and then afterwards it gets handed over to some of the family offices, venture capital, etc. So we deal in that. We allocate about $110 million a year into early stage companies, very sector agnostic. But accessing capital is incredibly important in trying to scale a company. It doesn't matter where you are. You could be in Canada, you could be in Hong Kong, you could wherever you can be in Moscow, wherever you want. Capital is key, especially for an early stage company. But also they have to consider other things. These aren't companies that actually have resources to really kind of play around with. What does Hong Kong bring versus Singapore, versus Moscow, versus Dubai, versus Frankfurt, right? I mean, at the end of the day, there is a bit of a choice that has to be made. So when we look at, for example, Hong Kong in this particular context that we are in, we have to try to figure out what is Hong Kong's strength. And as early stage investors, we know that no one region can ever be jack of all trades. Oh yeah, we do mega deals, and we do like minute deals. It's really tough to really kind of communicate that message, especially to a startup, an early stage company that already has its head full of all sorts of different scaling problems. So when the company's ready to scale, or when the company is ready to actually look outside of its own jurisdiction, and that usually is led by us, the investors, not necessarily led by the CEO, because CEOs tend to be heads down into the business. It's the investors that push the company to an M&A, that push the company to a different jurisdiction. We need to know, what does Hong Kong bring to the table? And that could be in the form of, as you said, a springboard to a wider mainland China, and we need to know what that means in terms of regulatory, in terms of how that distribution is done, in terms of the logistics. But also at the same time, being Canadian companies, we're subject to a tremendous amount of taxes. Can Hong Kong deliver the value of minimizing some of the flow-through taxes that is desperately needed with some of the startup companies here in Canada? So we're really kind of, it's almost like arbitrage, right? So, Canada has high taxes, they have a lot of services. Hong Kong, if you're structuring it right, we can actually take advantage of that. In fact, I am actively looking for one of our portfolio companies for tax advantages, not necessarily a market advantage, but tax advantages, right? So that's one way to move a company to a different jurisdiction. The other example is the pools of capital that you referred to. Hong Kong has traditionally been an institutional investor economy. What do I mean by that? Sizable venture capital, 50 million above, 100 million, 500 million, billion, private equity, institutional investors, and there's a tremendous amount of knowledge, expertise, and global competitiveness in the city that I think, in my experience, and we've done work in all parts of the world, especially for Canadian companies, that's quite lost. When you approach an early stage company in Canada, they don't really necessarily understand what institutional investor pools really can look like, what family offices can actually look like. And it's up to us, and it's up to this panel really, to educate the early stage companies on what's available, and more importantly, how to get access to it, because not all institutional investors like to invest $5 million into a company. It's just too small for these companies. It's just too small it's not in their mandate. So what is Hong Kong's mandate? does Hong Kong have these pools of capital that have that mandate to invest and allocate capital into smaller early stage companies and to merge and to acquire? Because it's not just capital, it's always mergers, it's always acquisitions. And this is why, you know, we're a part of the M&A club as well. So there's a lot of different variables that go into a decision. And specifically with Hong Kong, we need to know exactly what its expertise is. Beyond just Hong Kong has 6.3% GDP growth, that's all good. We need to know the specifics. And that's how we move forward with our portfolio companies.
Well, that's really interesting. So, you know, what, from your point of view, what does a company, like if you've accompanied some into Asia, what does a company have to demonstrate to have the best chance to secure financing in Asia for expansion?
Track record. I have yet to see a company, a startup company that has very little track record here in North America, be very successful in Asia. One of the first questions that they ask in Hong Kong is, you know, like, what are you doing in your home country? And that's what we ask over here as well. If a company is coming in from Asia, we're like, so, okay, you're here now. There's a growing market there. What are you doing here? Right. So, and how can we help you in terms of capital, etc. So track record is number one. They have to have proven investor validation and proven market validation. I'm not saying they need to have millions upon millions, hundreds, tens of millions of dollars in revenue. Making sure that the product or the service that they own, that they put forward, has market validation. That's key before they should even consider going outside, especially into Asia. The other thing is, I think these companies should be open-minded. It's like I said, it's not just capital. It could be a merger, a joint venture. It could, you know, there is a tremendous volume of companies in Hong Kong and in the Greater Bay Area, technology specific companies, life sciences companies that are open to mergers, acquisitions, and that is a wonderful way to grow. And we can actually provide that capital to help them grow in that fashion as well. So they need to keep an open mind in what growth really means.
Yeah, absolutely. So just one last question, and then I wanted to ask Jean-Jacques a similar question, because obviously he's on the ground working with companies, right? But can you, without saying any names, obviously to breach confidentiality, but can you give us an example of a company that you've worked with recently that was actually able to tap into the pools of capital here in Hong Kong, and what were the obstacles, as they were going on that journey?
Yeah, so I guess I'll give you two examples. One is a slightly later stage company. When I mean slightly later stage company, they're usually beyond what we look at, but they've come to a point where we can help them as well. They were looking to raise 185 to 200 million. A company actually out of England that came to Canada. And then they're just kind of, setting up a office there. It's a jewelry manufacturer, which fits the expertise in Hong Kong, right? Which fits the whole brand expertise that they have in the region, as well as in Japan as well. So we took the company, and we're now actively working with the company in Japan and in Hong Kong to close that capital. The advantage for some of the local companies in your jurisdictions is that they have the opportunity to potentially take that company after the big raise to an IPO or to a much bigger acquisition. So that's where we were able to attract the pools of capital for this company. The other company was more on the gaming side. Just online gaming side. It's a company based out of Toronto. We were able to take it to Hong Kong and the surrounding region, actually, and they received some good traction. Because it's these types of gaming companies are based on the investors' ability to push online media to the target audience. And so we attracted the right type of investors. The other thing that I'll mention is that over 35% of our investments are actually in the life sciences sector, whether that be pharma or in medical device or med tech. So that's another sector that's really attracting a lot of interesting investors, from both sides of the ocean.
Yeah, actually we hear that a lot, but I just wanted to ask you one last very specific question. So those guys who were successful in raising capital, who did they raise from? Were they raising from venture capital based here, family offices mostly?
Absolutely. That's excellent question. The larger company, the larger raise is more institutional, more on the private equity, private investment. We see a lot of the family offices getting into earlier stage, and we actually do work with a lot of family offices here in North America as well. And that's where we could actually maneuver these companies into. Like I said, it has to meet the mandate of the investors, and it has to be the right opportunity. So that's where we start. And I think my experience, especially last year's AFF, there's a very strong and a deep rooted family office culture in Hong Kong, and to be able to tap that, to be able to really kind of build that relationship is extremely important for us, because it goes back and forth, right? Their portfolio, our portfolio.
That's right. Yeah, and we see that as well. And it's not just the big families. There's a lot of money here that's from, you know, people that you might not ever know or hear about in the papers. So just to continue that financing conversation from your point of view, Jean-Jacques, for the companies that you work with in Asia, what are the key points for them to be successful in raising money for expansion? Because you're here on the ground, right? And you're talking about it every day. And also, what sources are they mostly raising money from, you know, in your experience?
Yeah. So you may have many reasons actually to invest in Asia or through Asia or via Asia, but there are always a common variable. It needs funding. Okay. The funding basically could be your own funding. I mean, you bring your strength from overseas. Okay. And this is a possibility. But what you need to know is the banks in Asia are not working the same way as in Europe or as in Canada or as in the US. They will not provide you funding most of the time, especially early stage, especially even up to series B or C, you would have difficulty to access funding. Okay, so what I would say is it's really key, whether you want to invest in Asia for diversification of your sourcing, for basically building a regional hub, or for joining what you say the Asia century. You know, it's still time, and basically it's still early, and it's still time to jump in. Many domestic markets are developing, especially with the commercial fight, basically with some of the major countries. You have basically now emerging, which are really growing fast. Okay, we're talking about the Southeast Asia countries. You have basically then opportunities to set targets and basically to say, okay, how do I get my funding? Well, the funding in Asia, you need basically what I say, eyes on the ground. That means people like us, you know, that are here. I mean, I arrived in Asia in 2007 through Japan, and now I'm in Hong Kong. I've had regional responsibilities, and you have several boutique consulting like us, basically, who are here, who knows the company. Okay, we accompany 40 corporate clients basically over the last 6 years, and basically we know on the ground who are the good target, what are the specifics of the markets, what would be, you know, the difficulty you would face. And what's important is basically so to have those professionals on the ground, identify the right local partners and target. Okay. We're going to also look into investment in scalable and duplicable projects, because most of the time you choose one country, like say Ozan, basically, why Hong Kong? Well, you could join Singapore, you could join basically Thailand first, but what is certain is you have markets which have similarities. Okay, so you're going to test Hong Kong, and then you're going to duplicate in Singapore. You're going to successfully be in Singapore, and then you're going to duplicate in Taiwan, etc. Depends on which sector and which industry you are in. You need to conduct a professional due diligence because Asia is far, Asia is complex versus Canada. Again, so many currencies, so many tax rules and laws and stuff like that. So basically, you need to have a real deep due diligence, okay? And basically, you need to test the market. What's important in Asia is time, you know, so where you could have a success in your domestic market because you know it perfectly in 1 to 3 years, most of the time in Asia, success comes after 5 or 6 years. So I could say you could look for funding, okay, your own project, but you should also consider the fast track, and the fast track most of the time is basically to acquire targets, and that's the M&A. So basically, you have a lot, and because the banks are not funding, and I'm a former banker, you know, so because the banks are not funding the economy here on early stages, what's important is basically to say, okay, I'm going to acquire that target, and I need to go through people who are able basically to get me those this capital, you know, and source me the right target.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so then I just have another question to bounce off of that. So can you give us an example of a company that you helped with either their financing or M&A efforts here? Of course, you know, without naming any names, if it's confidential, but you know, just so we can get a flavor of, you know, what were the obstacles and you know, what was the process?
Yeah. So basically, first, all of our clients have a visibility on the cash flow. You know, they all have 12 to 18 months visibility, full visibility, because of the reason of the lack of funding of the banks. So you need to know when you're going to hit the wall. And if you have 12 months ahead, then you have time to basically to identify solution. And that's to come back on the graph I introduced earlier today. Basically, that's why most of the Asia countries have reacted very strong and very positively to the COVID, because basically they were ready and they had opportunities on the ground. They knew their market, they knew their figures, and they knew how to adapt. There is this culture here. So I'm going to take one example with one Canadian shareholder, basically here located in Hong Kong. We did a round which could be described as a post-seed / pre-series A. It's a health tech / insurance tech. The insurance sector is going to expand with huge opportunities here in Asia Pacific, and most important in mainland China. So you have a lot of initiative relative to health tech and insurtech. We did a round, basically, we opened the round December, and we closed the round April. It was successful. And the difficulty here was that my clients didn't want actually me to reach insurers or to reach basically professionals from the health industry, so no doctors, no clinic, etc. And still we needed to explain why to join this project. The second difficulty was basically that we did kind of a new mechanism to invest in early stage companies, which is called SAFE. So SAFE become actually more and more known by the investors, but by the common public is less. So a SAFE basically is to defer to the next round the percentage ownership that you would own as a direct investor in the company. It's really simple. It pushed basically the discussion around the valuation of the company, because we know a valuation which is in the next round. So we know when we reach this stage, then you would have that. And this is basically, this was really successful. We approached approximately, well, I cannot say how many investors, but we had an answer of at least half were interested, and almost all invested in the company. So 4 months. Basically.
That's okay, which seems quite fast actually here in Asia. So Patricia, yeah, so thank you for that, Jean-Roch. Now, Patricia, let's flip this around and focus on Canada for a minute. So when you're speaking to companies here in Asia wanting to invest in Canada, how do they view the investment landscape? And what kind of industries or sectors are you finding they are most interested in now?
Are you talking about Hong Kong people looking to establish a presence in Canada?
For example, yeah, or looking to invest in companies in Canada, for example, acquisitions or whatever. Like, are you seeing a trend in terms of industries?
Well, I would say definitely on the ICT, information communication technology, there's a lot of interest from Hong Kong companies in Canada. A lot of that stems from Canada's strength in that area, but also the talent pool. And this was actually something when I was in Los Angeles before I came here, was the same thing. We had a lot of IT companies in Southern California that were looking at that. And so, you know, this is something that when we start working with them, they're also quite interested in some of the different incentives that are available to them, and which is a big part of the role is we connect them in with the provinces and the municipalities and the different organizations. So, you know, that's, we had one company recently, an IT company in Hong Kong that approached us about setting up in Canada. So normally this is something we do a whole visit. We'd set up meetings for them. Obviously couldn't do that, but Krista and her team set up a virtual visit to Canada. So they met with 3 provinces, 6 municipalities, academic institutions, because again, it's the talent pool that they're quite interested whether or not they'll be able to identify and hire the people that they need. Also, some of the industry associations connected them in with legal firms, other government departments, because there is some funding that they can actually access there too, and other service providers. But we also linked them up with some other Hong Kong companies that have set up business in Canada. So for them to chat with them and find out, you know, what was their experience, and, you know, maybe perhaps avoid any of the bumps that maybe others had had, but just, you know, gain that experience. But, you know, I would say ICT is a top one, clean technology, life sciences, as was mentioned earlier too. Those are all, when it comes to investment in Canadian companies, I'd say those 3 areas, ICT, clean tech, and life sciences are key.
So, okay, we're coming up to the end of our time here. Thank you for that, Patricia. As with many webinars, you know, we're all slaves to our connection. So, Emily, to help wrap this up, what are some key tips that you can give to companies wanting to invest or expand in Asia based on your experience, you know, in order for them to increase their chances of success?
Thank you, Rosemary. I think Sean Hawk has given us also very well professional advice on his work on the similar subjects. My simple answer is do your homework, seek advice, and establish connection. Do your homework is that we always know that there are companies who are interested to expand themselves into other markets. But I think one company has to understand the objective of expansion into a new market, particularly Asia, that if you are not familiar with. And the second one is to seek advice. For example, like talk to us, like our investment promotion team, because we don't actually encourage every client come to us to go to Hong Kong immediately. You may have to establish more of your profile in your own market. You may have to establish more network before you go ahead. And the third one is to make connections. Some of the successful companies may first establish some clientele in Asia, in Hong Kong, and then open up their first office as a customer service office in the Asia Pacific region, so that they have a taste of what the market has become and what has the advantages of the company before they put a more further step into it. And for example, to get an experience in Hong Kong, there are a lot of different opportunities, like what Patricia has mentioned. Our office, the Consul General in Hong Kong, as well as the Hong Kong Trade Development Council, always organizes also trade missions for companies here to join the expos in Hong Kong. Ozan, for example, mentioned about the Asia Financial Forum, which we organize every every January. And that at those forums, at those expos, companies may have a very good chance to match with investors or to match with new potential partners. So we always encourage companies to do a lot of homework, plan ahead well before they set foot. But to wrap up, I always mention to companies in Canada that Hong Kong is always one of the best destinations for your expansion because of say the commonalities between the two places. For Canadians who come to Hong Kong, you will never feel lonely. You have like Rosemary in the Canadian Chamber of Hong Kong. You have so many other like-minded Canadian companies, professionals who are already working in Hong Kong to support a newcomer. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, well, thanks for that. I came back, my connection reestablished right in time to wrap it up. Okay, so I think that wraps up today's session. So now it's time for the Q&A. So I just want to thank you, the panelists, Emily, Patricia, Jean-Jacques, and Ozan, for sharing your expertise and experience. I hope that it was helpful. I know that it was for me. I was able to get 3 main takeaways out of this. Obviously, I got some more context of the diverse business landscape in Asia, right? It's not homogenous, many different countries, and Hong Kong's a great springboard for all of that. I heard some important tips on where to get financing and how to be successful securing it with Asian investors. And I understood better the different resources available through Emily's and Patricia's offices in helping those who want to, or Canada.
So I have a question for Ozan. I hope everyone can hear me. The M&A Club are commission leaders to for Canada to the Asian Financial Forum, the AFF, which is mentioned before, and we encourage our members to go there because, of course, valuations for companies are going to be much higher out of our geographic area, and certainly in Canada and probably around the world, a lot of these transactions are local or regional. But when you go out of your region or your national jurisdiction, often valuations are higher. So that's why we tried to encourage our members to go there and see what's happening in the world, especially, of course, in Asia. And so we're involved with the AFF. And Ozan went. I think, Ozan, you've been 2 times, and I wondered if you could tell everyone, because we're trying to encourage more members to go, obviously, every year. And it's always in January. So hopefully in January 2022, we'll have a live AFF. So Ozan, you went there not knowing too much about it, and you've been twice. Did you make good contacts, and how did it help your particular lines?
Absolutely. I think it's a great organization. I think it's a great event. It's really, you see a lot of people, you meet a lot of people, and I'll admit, first time, the biggest value I had was the networking into the family offices, and really kind of getting a better feeling of, how they invest, what they invest into, and really kind of building that relationship. At the end of the day, it's all relationship. Right? How do you build that relationship? You can't just go once and assume that you're going to get that relationship done. You have to go over and over and over again. There's certain nuances as well. I mean, Jean-Jacques said that SAFE was something, a SAFE vehicle was a pretty good investment in Hong Kong. For example, for us here in Canada, in Toronto, we're not a big fan of SAFEs. So we kind of discourage our companies. But that doesn't mean that they should never use a SAFE in a different jurisdiction. They should never restructure in a different jurisdiction. This is a perfect case in point. This is why you need to go and participate in these types of conferences and meet up with these various different people, Jean-Jacques of the world, that can tell you, you know what, they do work here in this region. So that's why I think, everybody, all the members of the M&A Club really should participate in the AFF. I think it's a very valuable initiative.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ozan. Just for those who don't know, it's 4,000 people. It's 2 days. It's very high level. It's brilliantly organized. You have, when I say high level, they've had Timothy Geithner, they've had Ben Barnaky as keynote speakers. They've had the CEO of Deutsche Bank. I mean, the highest level people are, there. banks, the Moody's, and they're all senior level, C-level people mostly.
I think especially Canadians should be going to places like that, like, the AFF in Hong Kong and New York, etc., because these types of jurisdictions are where all sorts of different capital flow through. The capital flowing through Hong Kong isn't owned by Hong Kong, it's just flow through. And like you said, Ram, you meet all these different types of people. You're not going to, make a deal with the CEO of Deutsche Bank, but I can assure you there's another 1,500 people that are there that are looking to make deals, right? So that's you get a different sense of where the world and how the world turns around, especially as a Canadian company.
Yeah. Well, we also, as if we should have, we should have known anyway, but we realized time and again that Made in Canada was a very valued brand in Asia. And I think there are not enough Canadian companies realize that, whether it's, and we're not just talking about maple syrup, obviously, anything made in Canada has great value. Anyway, I don't want to monopolize. If there's other questions.
I think there's a question. Yeah, I think there's a question in the chat. Sorry, I dropped off again. So this is a question from Henry, actually, somebody that I work with in Hong Kong, who's a tax specialist, a cross-border tax specialist. And his question is, as SPAC is popular recently, he'd like to know more about how do startups prepare themselves to be SPAC targets. So maybe Jean-Jacques and Ozan, you guys have some insights for him?
I can just start. I think, keep your options open. SPAC is the new kind of flavor du jour on the investment and M&A circles, but it has its pros and it has its cons. Be very, very careful on how you approach the SPACs. But you keep your options open on all sorts of different ways of funding. But it is a good opportunity.
And Jean-Jacques, did you have anything to add? I've heard.
Personally, I'm a little bit skeptical about the SPAC. Basically, I believe there are not enough targets in the world. So, as an investor, maybe willing to inject money into those projects, be very careful. Some people would be disappointed, and there is no miracle around this. Of course, it's not expert advice, it's a personal advice, but I would not, as an investor, consider any SPAC at the moment, basically. And I believe the startups are just, the valuation is too small. So it's good to have dream and to dream about IPO or being selected for SPACs, etc. But I think it's too early stage, actually.
Okay, that makes sense. Did you guys, while I was off, Jean-Jacques, did you get to answer the question about the regulations for fintech companies in Hong Kong versus Canada?
No, but I can basically talk about Hong Kong. I think Hong Kong and Greater Bay in general are very good, basically ecosystem for fintechs. We have basically fintechs who choose to be regulated by Hong Kong regulators. So we have two regulators. We have the SFC for capital market, and we have basically the HKMA for the banking. There are many opportunities, but same as in any country, like Ozan was saying, everyone is offering mega super deals, etc. But I think especially in Hong Kong and in Shenzhen, it's true. In Hong Kong, we have two major locations, and we have a science park, which I think Emily mentioned, and we have basically a cyberport. You have hundreds of fintechs there, from basically startup to Series B or C, and it's not specific on the regulation, but everything is done so that you success, but for Canada, I don't know, so I need someone else to answer.
So maybe Emily, you could just jump in there.
I don't have a thorough study on the regulations about fintech in Canada, but what we know is that it's not really a difficult path for companies, fintech companies in Canada to go to Hong Kong. Basically, we always have a very similar systems and regulations in many areas, like those in the professional areas, particularly like legal, other professional sectors. So I guess from what we know is they have those fintech companies from Canada, when they land in Hong Kong, when they expand in Hong Kong, they do not see much difficulty in, to adjust, for example, like when they set up their companies in other Asian destinations.
Okay, well, since fintech's such a big topic, obviously here and you know, all over the world, I don't know, Patricia or Ozan, if you guys have anything, because I think that might have been our last question, so we could sort of end it on there. If you guys had some final comments you wanted to add.
I just add that. I mean, fintech. It's got when we talk about fintech, it's kind of like talking about you know, oh yeah, I invest in technology companies. What does that mean? It could be life sciences to a massive spectrum. So fintech, the sector itself is growing, and it really depends on what type of fintech. So if you're, for example, into digital currencies, Hong Kong may not be the place for you. It could be more Malta. It could be somewhere else, right? And it's an exploding sector right now. So all the blockchain, cryptocurrency. But if you're into insurtech, if you're into other types of traditional fintech, then it may be. So you got to do your homework in which jurisdiction is the right jurisdiction for you, that you're not going to hit a wall, and just make sure that you know you consult with the right networks.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Fintech is so vast, right? It's you know, it's very big. So Patricia, any last comments before we wrap up today's session and say thank you to everybody for joining us?
I think, you know, if any company in Hong Kong is looking at that and, you know, is in that area looking at investing into Canada, we would work with our colleagues at Invest in Canada to make sure that they're connected in with the right service providers. We're not accountants or lawyers, but what we do is make sure that we're putting them in touch with the people that are going to give them the expert advice that they need so they can make the right decisions. Because every company is different, you know, in terms of board of directors and where it's based in headquarters. So, you know, it's for our big role is just making sure that they're connected in with all the right people.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So great resources from yours and Emily's office. So I'm gonna say thank you very much. Bram, did you want to say a few things and wrap it up?
Sure. Well, thank you, Rosemary, and thank you for bringing in Jean-Roch. Thank you for bringing yourself, obviously, and Jean-Roch and Patricia. It's really thrilling to have, you know, such five, you know, experts and high-level knowledgeable people, you know, to bring all this information to us here in Canada, especially, and we're delighted to have people from Hong Kong on the line also, you know, who can meet Canadians and touch them now as much as they can on a Zoom call. But I hope there's lots of connections made tonight, or in your case, in the morning. And we will be continuing our webinars. We'll take off for the summer. The last one is July 7th. Actually, it's in French. Very interesting. And you can see that at maclub.ca if you want to have any further information. But we have some really interesting ones coming up in the fall, and we hope to have live meetings in the fall. We'll have to see how that goes, subject to, of course, regulations, and also for New York City, subject to regulations. But the M&A Club is growing. We're very happy about that, and we've been successful with the webinars. We said this is number 89 or something, and attendance has been good. So it's been a whole new connectivity for the M&A Club to connect people across Canada together now across, you know, to Hong Kong. So thank you very much. We may ask you all to come for a repeat performance in the upcoming months and see what's newly developed in the fall. But for the time being, we'll wish you, of course, safe and health times this summer. Enjoy your summer, and we thank everybody for attending. Thank you all very much, all the presenters, and you, Rosemary, particularly. We'll sign off.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thank
you.
for
Bye.
having us. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Take
Jose.
care, everybody.
Take care.